3 spine-chilling true summer night horror tales exposing sinister secrets and cursed encounters. Ruth's heart raced as she tucked her kids into bed, the sounds of creaking boards echoing through her home. Maple Hollow usually hummed with comfort, but tonight was different. A soft rustling slithered past her windows, a whisper of something watching. It wasn't the kids' laughter she felt, but a chilling murmur curling through the air, wrapping around her like an icy grip. The flickering lights of her neighbors' porches made the ordinary feel nightmarish. What was stalking outside? She stood frozen, a bead of sweat trailing down her spine. She swore she heard her children mumbling in hushed tones, as if holding secrets just out of reach. Pressing her ear to the door, she could hear it, the tremors of faint whispers, unsettling and sinister. Unsettled, she tried to shake off the inexplicable fear creeping its way into her thoughts, but deep down, she knew something was wrong. How could her ordinary world feel so dreadfully wrong? The dread thickened. Ruth remembered the abandoned house next door. The stories were deeply etched in the town's folklore, chilling tales of children lost to the darkness decades ago. Each whispered tragedy dug its way into her heart, beating faster as local kids went missing one by one. Was it mere coincidence, or was something dark and ancient turning the neighborhood into a hunting ground? Ruth knew she had to keep her kids close, but the sense of sinister outlines lurking beyond their cozy life weighed heavy. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Ruth turned away from the door, her heart pounding with desperation. As she settled back on the couch, an eerie stillness settled over the room. The flickering lights seemed to pulse, stirring darker shadows in the corners. She shivered, visions of kids with vacant eyes and hollow laughter swirling in her mind. The unsettling sounds continued. Were her hasty breaths drowning out the creaks from the house next door? With every thump of her heart, she felt a cold sweat wick at her brow. That night, the whispers deepened. Her children spoke with fierce intent, laughing at something unseen. "Mommy, we made friends," they chimed, glee dripping entwined with a familiarity that sent chills coursing through her veins. These weren't friends, not if they lived in a house cloaked by fear, surrounded by twisted tales of missing children. Twilight had turned into a storm and her need to protect her kids intensified. Ruth knew she couldn't shun the eerie tension hanging thick like a fog. She had to confront whatever darkness had invaded their home. With that terrifying thought clawing at her resolve, a fire ignited within her. She would uncover the truth behind the shadows in Maple Hollow. On a fateful night, the urge to venture into the abandoned house surged within her, an unexplainable compulsion dragging her close to the splintered doorframe. The air thickened. Outside, the whispers turned to chants, her children's voices rising from the living room in surreal harmony. Terrified, she stepped forward, barely breathing, and opened the door. Was she prepared for the truth hidden amidst the relics of despair? The chilling chant echoed louder, her children's sweet faces glowing in the dark. Darkness awaited, and she now stood on the precipice of their harrowing reality, her children's secrets weaving an inescapable spell. As Ruth stepped through the door, the air inside the abandoned house hit her like a cold wave. Dust hung thick in the stale air, and the musty scent reminded her of forgotten things. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but her children's voices, clear and innocent, floated through the darkness, hypnotizing her with an eerie calmness. "Mommy, come play with us," they sang, the chant echoing in harmonies that twisted her very soul. The hallway stretched in front of her, shadowy and foreboding. She hesitated but took a step, an unseen force pulling her deeper into the house. The wooden floor groaned beneath her weight, each creak sounding like a scream begging to be released. As she moved, the whispers shifted back to sinister murmurs, mingling with the laughs that now retreated into the empty corners like frightened children. She squinted through the dark, searching for her kids. "Where are you?" Ruth's voice cracked, desperation bubbling to the surface. The shadows danced around her, a play of light and darkness that felt alive. Then she spotted them, her children, standing in the middle of a dimly lit room. Their faces were illuminated by flickering moonlight filtering through cracked windows, and they appeared almost ethereal, but something was wrong. They turned toward her, and their eyes, those weren't the familiar eyes she loved. They were too wide, too glazed over, as if a veil had lifted from their souls. "Mommy, we found them!" They shouted in unison, pointing toward the walls that seemed to pulse, the wood grain twisting and undulating as if alive. An icy finger traced the back of her neck, and she felt a prickling warning crawl over her skin. She took a step closer, trembling. It was then she noticed tiny drawings etched into the walls, childish scrawls that morphed in the half-light. Figures, grotesque and twisted, children with sad, hollow eyes and mouthless smiles. Beneath them were dates, each marked with a painfully immortal reminder of lives lost: 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. The names blurred and blended into a sinister tapestry of despair. Ruth stumbled backward. "What are you talking about? What have you found?" She cast a frantic glance back toward the door, seeking escape. But the heavy darkness coiled tighter around her, and behind her, her children were not moving. They stood perfectly still, waiting. "Friends, Mommy. The ones from the stories." Their voices twisted, filling the room with an unearthly resonance. "Don't you see them?" A chill gripped Ruth as the room filled with the echoes of laughter, soft at first, then rising like a cacophony of disembodied voices. "Join us, Mommy." They reached out, their tiny hands stretching towards her, palms open, beckoning. Ruth's breath came in sharp gasps as dread clawed at her throat. She didn't want to look, to see what lay behind their innocent smiles. The chant rose, twisting around her, invulnerable and intoxicating. Her children beckoned, voices mingling with an unsettling familiarity that tore at her sanity. With a frantic impulse, she turned away, desperate to flee from the unholy bond forming between them. The house trembled, walls vibrating with an energy that was blood-curdling. "No!" she screamed, "You're not my children." As she ran, shadows surged, reaching for her, pulling her back. Her heart thundered, reverberating through the claustrophobic air, a warning that fell on deaf ears. Just as she thought she might escape, a deafening silence fell like a heavy blanket. The doors slammed shut with a resounding crash, a final nail sealing her fate. Now trapped, Ruth felt the darkness close in around her. The laughter of her children morphed into something menacing, drowning her sanity. "Welcome to our family, Mommy." But as she felt the shadows envelop her, something deep inside clawed for the truth. Could she still save them? The whispers began again, softer this time, entwined with secrets waiting to be uncovered. What had they truly found in this cursed house? And would she dare to learn the truth? Ruth's heart raced as panic surged through her veins. The air thickened, wrapping around her like a vice. She could feel eyes watching her, unseen but palpably present. Struggling for breath, she clawed at the door, but it wouldn't budge. The walls loomed, pulsating as if alive, mocking her with every desperate push. "Mommy." The children's voices chimed with a dissonance that sent icy tendrils crawling down her spine. They were so close now, their once sweet faces twisted into masks of twisted delight, shadows weaving around them like a cloak. "They're waiting for you." Her mind rebelled against the waves of despair crashing over her. She couldn't let them in, couldn't let them take her into the darkness that loomed outside her reach. She turned, drawn to the flickering glow of a distant room, the only place that offered a semblance of light. But as she moved, the laughter escalated, a wild chorus echoing her every step, urging her to come closer. The door at the end of the hallway stood ajar, creaking as if it, too, were whispering invites to the abyss beyond. With trembling hands, she pushed it open, and her eyes widened at the sight before her. The room sparkled with an ethereal light that danced off strange objects scattered across red velvet sheets. Glass toys, dolls with cracked porcelain faces, and trinkets twinkled like fallen stars. A chill ran down her spine. This was not just a room, it felt like a shrine. In the center, a dollhouse sat, unnaturally pristine. The windows sparkled, almost winking at her. She stepped closer, drawn by an invisible string, peering through the miniature windows. Inside, figures moved silently. They were replicas of her children, stoic and still, constructed from the very darkness she was trying to escape. "Look! A new game." The voice exploded in her ears, and the familiar warmth of her children's laughter twisted cruelly. "If you join us, you can play forever." Ruth staggered backward, throat tightening. She had to get out. She dashed toward the door, but as she turned, an imposing figure emerged from the depths of the room. It was a shadow draped in darkness, towering and faceless. The air crackled with malice. "Leave them!" Ruth shouted, but her voice wavered. The shadow twisted and undulated, inching closer as if drawn by her fear. "You don't understand. They are mine now." "No!" She screamed, and with a primal instinct, she lunged for the window, the last portal to freedom. But just as she reached it, the dollhouse glowed brighter, and the air thickened. Her feet were chained to the ground, swallowed by an unseen force. "Stay with us, Mommy, forever," the words echoed and submerged her heart in despair. As the figure advanced, endless darkness poured out, swallowing the room whole. Ruth gasped, feeling the chilling grip of despair wrap around her throat. She could barely breathe. So many questions simmered beneath the surface. What had her children truly found in this cursed dollhouse? Were they trapped too, like the lost souls that roamed this house? "Mommy, won't you come play?" Their voices sang, each note pulling Ruth deeper into the void. With her vision blurring, despair clawed at her. Would she succumb to the shadows or fight for her children's souls? Just as she felt the darkness embrace her, realization struck like a lightning bolt. There was something or someone behind the shadow that could restore her family. What had drawn them into this horror? And would she be able to confront the truth before it consumed her? Ruth's thoughts raced. The shadows loomed large, eager to drag her down into their cold embrace. Each breath felt like a battle, every heartbeat thunderous. "There's a way," she murmured, recalling the flickering glow of the dollhouse. If it had the power to trap her children, it might also hold the key to saving them. With fresh determination, Ruth forced her feet to move. The darkness writhed around her, hissing softly, urging her to stop. "Join us," it whispered, a silky, cunning promise. She gritted her teeth, pushing against the terror gripping her heart. The room pulsed as she neared the dollhouse, its vibrant colors almost mocking her. Tiny figures danced in the windows, faceless puppets of her lost children. "Come play forever." Their voices echoed, now brighter, more insistent. "No!" she shouted, shaking her head. She wouldn't listen. She had to fight back. Ruth reached into her pocket, feeling the small object she'd taken from the living room earlier, a piece of the glass toy. It shimmered against her palm like a beacon. Holding it up before her, she focused on the light, the single thing that still felt rooted in hope amid the chaos. As she advanced, the shadow recoiled, hissing as if stung. It shifted, trying to merge with the darkness in the corners of the room. "You think that trinket can save you?" It snarled, the malice palpable in its voice. "It only binds you deeper. Get away from my children." Ruth screamed. With all her strength, she hurled the glass piece at the dollhouse. The moment it struck, an explosion of light erupted, blinding her momentarily. The shadow shrieked, an unholy sound that resonated within her bones. As her vision cleared, she saw cracks forming in the dollhouse, flashes of her children's faces flickering behind the glass. "Mommy! Help us!" they cried with fervor, their voices mingling with the cacophony of anguish surrounding her. Ruth dashed toward the dollhouse, propelled forward by the sound of their pleas. Just as she reached the miniature door, the shadow lunged, tendrils of darkness wrapping around her wrists. She gasped, the icy grip threatening to pull her into the abyss. "Mommy," a voice echoed inside her head, softer now, begging, "You can't leave us." Fighting against the clutches that sought to claim her, Ruth clawed at the darkness. "No. I will not let you take them," she roared, adrenaline fueling her desperation. She pulled her children's names from deep within her, shouting them into the void as if they were a prayer. Suddenly, the dollhouse shimmered violently, the figures within contorting, their glassy eyes filled with terror. Ruth felt a surge of energy, a pulse that resonated with her heart. "Together," she called, focusing with every ounce of love she possessed. "We're coming to get you." In that moment, the darkness shuddered, the ice around her wrists cracking. She grasped the doorknob of the dollhouse, a force pulling her toward the light. She yanked it open, but time seemed to stop as shadows roared in fury. As she stepped inside, Ruth felt warmth envelop her, a cocoon pulling her deeper. Images rushed past her, glimpses of laughter, echoes of past summers with her children. Then it shifted, the visions turning twisted and cruel. She saw her children's faces change, morphing into grotesque smiles as the darkness swirled maliciously around them, a feral glee enveloping their expressions. The last thing Ruth heard before silence fell was the taunting laughter, echoing and melding into the shadows. But just as she began to lose herself, a bright light flickered in the distance, just beyond the dark. Was it freedom? Was it her children calling for her, or a trick of the shadow? Ruth's pulse quickened, uncertainty clawing at her. She had to know. Would she step beyond the veil, or would the shadows swallow her whole? What is waiting for me on the other side? She wondered, as the darkness closed in again, thick and suffocating. Ruth's heart hammered wildly in her chest as the light flickered closer, teasing with an enticing warmth. The shadows pressed against her, their breath like icy fingers trailing across her skin. "Step into the light, Ruth," they whispered, a chorus of seductive voices that promised release. "You know your children are here, waiting." Playing. She hesitated. The shadows were lying, she knew it. Just beyond them lurked the twisted specters of what had been her family. The ache in her chest tightened like a vice. With a ferocity born from love, she clawed forward, fighting against the smothering cloak of darkness. The bright light pulsed, and she felt a connection, an anchor to her life before this nightmare unfolded. She repeated her children's names, as if they were a lifeline tethering her spirit. "Mommy." A voice rang with urgency, shrouded in both delight and terror. "Help us." Ruth's eyes widened. It was her daughter's voice. But it sounded wrong, altered and warped, an echo of innocence twisted into a cruel game. "No!" she screamed, panic surging through her. "Where are you?" With each step, the light flickered, and shadows shrieked, almost as if they were alive, writhing and reaching for her. "Leave us." She heard her son's voice, dark and menacing. "Join us, Mom. Forever. You don't want to suffer. Help me." She shouted, fighting back tears, desperation clawing at her throat. "I'm coming for you." Every ounce of her being urged her to escape, to flee from this wretched trap. The ground beneath her began to shift, cracks splitting beneath her feet, revealing more darkness. Ruth stumbled, nearly losing her grip on reality, but the light pulled her, steadying her like a beacon amid a storm. And then, the heartbeat of the dollhouse trembled, sending muted waves of sound reverberating through the atmosphere. The figures within began to convulse, twisting in unnatural ways, their faces a grotesque mimicry of her children. "Help us, Mommy!" they cried, their voices merging into a cacophony. The warmth began to smother her, and the shadows took shape, their features vague yet menacing, flickering like bad static. "This is where you belong," they taunted, a shrill chorus that grated against her sanity. Ruth gritted her teeth, forcing her will against their pull. "No!" she shouted, rage surging as she stumbled forward. "You will not take me." For a fleeting moment, she caught a glimpse of her children's true faces behind the warped glass, fear, longing, and a flicker of hope. They were still there, buried beneath the chaos. As she lunged for the light, she felt the icy grasp of the shadows tighten, burning through her resolve. It was now or never. She reached out, her hand, trembling, brushing against the threshold of that glowing portal. Then, everything stopped. A chill swept through the room as the wavering light dimmed, shadows creeping in as though a whole world had shifted. She was caught between two realms, the warm, embracing light and the cold, seductive darkness. "Mommy, don't leave us." Her children's voices distorted, blending into a haunting melody that surged with urgency and dread. This was it. The breaking point. Just as she was ready to plunge into the light, the shadows screamed, reverberating through the air like shattered glass. The light flickered again, and suddenly, the door of the dollhouse swung wide open. What lay within was no longer the home she recognized. It was a churning void, a vortex of time and pain, beckoning her to cross. Ruth paused, fear gripping her heart like a vice. Could she save them, or would she become lost in the same abyss? The swirling light beckoned, almost familiar, and the shadows shrieked, their tendrils reaching, desperate to pull her back. Choose. The shadows howled, their voices blending into a fevered roar. And then, in that suspended moment, Ruth felt a tug, a sharp, undeniable connection. Behind her, behind the veil of darkness, her children emerged, fragile but alive. But suddenly, a piercing silence fell, and the light waned. Shadows retreated to form an impenetrable wall, smothering her presence. "Mommy. Please." They cried, but the plea morphed, darkening into a sinister echo. Ruth's heart skipped, a wave of uncertainty crashing over her. Would she leap into the void, or would she grasp the chance to save her children? Is this the end or a beginning? She whispered, the shadows closing in like storm clouds, as she realized the choice had become far graver than she ever imagined. What if she stepped into that light, only to seal their fates forever? The air crackled with an electric tension, thick and suffocating. Ruth stood at the precipice, her heart pounding against her ribs like a desperate prisoner trying to break free. The light flickered, hesitating as if debating whether to embrace her or cast her away. Each breath that left her chest tasted of ash and despair. "Mommy. Help." The voices cried again, but now they were joined by another sound, a low, grinding noise that rumbled through the air, like the grinding of ancient stone against stone. The dollhouse vibrated, and Ruth felt the ground tremble beneath her feet. "No. No!" she yelled, caught in an agonizing loop of hope and desperation. She couldn't abandon them, yet the abyss beckoned with its cold embrace, promising solace with a haunting undertone. Behind the door, shadows writhed like restless spirits, flickering in and out of existence. Ruth felt her resolve teetering on the edge of madness. "If only I could hold you just one more time," she murmured, the tears blurring her vision, threatening to drown out the light. Then, a piercing shriek ruptured the silence, a scream that sliced through her thoughts. "Join us!" It bellowed, but this time, she recognized the voice. It was her own, but it roared with a fury that repulsed her. This was more than just shadows trying to tempt her, it was a threat. "Mommy, I need you." As if spurred by instinct, Ruth lunged forward, plunging her fingers into the light. The warmth enveloped her, but instead of salvation, it felt like a trap, wrapping around her limbs like barbed wire. The shadows screeched, a cacophony of anguished cries that pulsed against her ears. "Ruth!" A voice resonated from the depths of the darkness. It was deep, resonant, a menacing growl that twisted her stomach into knots. "You cannot escape. You belong to us." Panic seized her heart. The light around her flickered madly. Just then, she felt a surge of power push her backward, forcing her to look away from the light and back toward the noxious abyss surrounding her children. Ghostly figures loomed, their eyes hollow and lifeless. They were remnants of her past, phantoms of what she had lost, staring back with hollow accusations. "Mommy, you left us." The children's voices merged, and the words morphed into a breathy lament that echoed around her. Each syllable struck like a hammer against her chest. "Enough!" Ruth shouted, her voice raw from fear and fury. She could no longer stand still. She tore her gaze from the startling brightness, the desire to save her children igniting an inferno within her. "I refuse to let you take me." The moment she turned her back, the shadows lunged, although she could not see them, their malice rippled through the air. A vortex of despair enveloped her, a whirlwind of every regret she harbored, each one trying to pull her down into its depths. Ruth, the call of her name floated closer, softer now. It felt joined with the light, a ripple of warmth shining against the oppressive dark. Perhaps they weren't lost, perhaps there was a way to reclaim them together. She took a shaky breath, anchoring her heart to that emerging light. "Hold on!" she screamed, not just to her children, but to the abyss that threatened to swallow her whole. Then, with one last surge, she stepped closer to the opening in the dollhouse, the threshold of her fate twisted with uncertainty. The shadows recoiled slightly, as if recoiling from an unseen stake of fear, but it was not enough to deter them. The door shuddered, vibrating against its hinges. "Show me," Ruth demanded, raw desperation igniting her voice as she reached out to grasp the light. Before her fingertips made contact, something dark shot past her, a swirling mass of foreboding that coalesced into a pinprick of black against the light. It formed into the vague shape of a child, a figure emerging from the shadows, a child she recognized too late. "Mommy!" The specter shrieked, the words laced with betrayal. It was her son, or at least a version of him, an echo of love twisted into a grotesque invitation. "Do not listen!" The chorus screamed around her, a maelstrom of voices filled with malice. Ruth felt torn in half, her heart squeezed with dread, each pull dragging her closer to an unbearable choice. The vortex of horror spun tighter. "Will you embrace the light, risking everything for hope?" A whisper drifted from the flaring brightness. In that moment, swirling shadows and flickering lights collided with the urgency of her resolve. Or succumb to the darkness and lose them all. Each word scraped against her sanity, sending shivers down her spine as she braced for whatever would come next. "Mommy!" The fragile voice echoed again. Will it draw her in or lead her to perdition? That question hung heavy in the thick air, tension electric as Ruth prepared for the final confrontation. Could she truly rescue them, or would she find only despair? With her heart pounding like a war drum, she steadied herself for one last attempt, aware that the true horror had yet to reveal itself. The shadows writhed, a malevolent dance in the periphery of Ruth's vision, waiting for her to falter. Her heart raced. "No! I won't let you win!" She screamed, her voice slicing through the suffocating darkness. The specter of her son wavered, his form still hauntingly familiar. "Mommy, it's so lonely," he cried, his voice laced with a deep sorrow that sliced through Ruth's resolve. Each word gnawed at her insides, pulling her closer to the dangerous edge. "Stop!" she yelled, clutching her temples as if to shatter the dreadful spell. The air felt like ice against her skin, every breath crystallizing into regret. "I won't let you take me to that place." The darkness recoiled slightly at her declaration, as if stung. But it wasn't deterred for long. Ghostly faces emerged, twisted and anguished, each one a grieved soul beckoning her closer. Misery hung heavy in the air, a stench of decay that made her gag. "Join us, Ruth," they whispered in unison, their eyes vacant but pleading. "We've waited for you," she gritted her teeth, forcing every ounce of strength into her voice. "I'm not yours to take." She turned her gaze back to the light, radiant and pure, the faint hope it offered ripping through the tenebrous storm. It beckoned warm, welcoming, reassuring. "Mommy!" The voice was now more insistent, a child's plea wrapped in urgency. "Come here. I need you." For a brief moment, doubt wormed into her heart. Was this real? Could she really bring them back? The memories of laughter and warmth flooded her mind, her son's first steps, her daughter's joyous giggle. It felt like a lifetime ago, veiled beneath layers of sadness and guilt. "Hold on, just hold on," she cried out, stepping forward. The shadows lunged, slithering toward her, tendrils of despair clawing at her ankles, pulling her down. She kicked out, straining against them, her strength waning. Desperation fueled her fight. She had to break free, had to reach her children before they slipped further into the dark. "Ruth!" The deep voice resonated again, an echo of warning and disdain. "You will lose everything." "No!" Ruth screamed, ripping her gaze from the luminous light, prepared for the compound of anguish waiting in the darkness. She needed to face it, to resist the lies that swirled and beckoned, pushing through the suffocating dread. "This isn't my end. I refuse to be lost." The echoes of the damning whispers grew louder, clattering like 100 wind chimes caught in a storm. They were drowning her resolve with their cacophony, urging her to join them in the eternal night. "You abandoned us, Mommy," but the words ignited a fire in her soul, and it consumed her fear. They had lost so much, but she wouldn't let their memory become a burden. She would rescue them or die trying. With new vigor, she stretched her hand out to the light. "I'm coming. Together, we'll return." Suddenly, everything shimmered before her, and a brilliant flash erupted outward, sending shockwaves that pulsed through her very core. The shadows recoiled, screeching as if wounded, melting away into nothingness, while the light surged forward, enveloping her. And just as her fingers grazed that warmth, darkness lashed back one last time. A screeching howl rang through her, cold as death, freezing her in her tracks. "You can't save them." The energy pulsed fiercely around her, the agony and anguish clawing at her sanity. She felt herself being pulled back into the void, toes curling in fear, but she shoved against it. "I won't let go," she shouted, straining against the unseen forces. As she fought, a flicker of movement caught her eye within the light, a small figure. "Mommy, please." The voice echoed, desperate and raw. It was a silhouette, slim and fragile, drifting toward her, caught between realms. Ruth's heart lurched. Was it truly her child, or another dark illusion meant to deceive? The pull of the void intensified. Desperation surged as every part of her screamed to make a choice. With every ounce of her being, she lunged. But as she reached for her child, a crushing force hit her, dragging her down into fathomless blackness. The light flickered above her, teasing and elusive. "Mommy!" Came the haunting cry again, and in that moment of despair, she felt a new presence, looming like a dark veil. "You don't belong here yet." As the shadows swirled violently around her, Ruth realized that this was only the beginning. The true horror lurked in the weight of choice she had yet to face. Could she truly navigate the consequences of this dark magic, or would she find herself once more enveloped in despair? Ruth's body slammed against the cold, unforgiving ground, the darkness swirling around her with a life of its own. Weightless and trapped, she struggled within an oppressive silence, her screams unheard, swallowed whole by the endless void. She reached out, grasping at shadows that quickly receded, teasing her, then tormenting her with their elusiveness. "Mommy!" The voice trembled through the air, its resonance both haunting and familiar, vibrating against her heart like a death knell. "Is it really you?" she gasped, desperation clawing at her throat. But as she stretched her fingers toward the echoes, they shattered, scattering into fragments of darkness filled with sinister laughter. Something lurked just beyond her vision, a silhouette morphing into a grotesque figure. It was misshapen, shifting rapidly, the contours of its body distorting in a cruel mimicry of life. Ruth's stomach churned at its presence. It was all wrong, couldn't be real. "Show yourself!" she yelled, her voice imbued with determination. "And what then, Ruth?" The voice, smooth like silk yet edged with malice, taunted her. "Would you have me release your children to you? Or let them remain in the darkness? Because one way or another, these shadows will have you." The very air felt alive, pulsing with dread, and Ruth's chest ached with an unbearable weight of loss. No. She cried, shaking her head. She needed to hold on, to cling to the flickering image of their smiling faces, but her memories twisted, contorting into a gnarled frame of agony. Remember the last time you saw them? The grotesque figure leaned closer, its breath a cold gust against her skin. Their faces twisted in sorrows of your choosing. Each word carried the stale scent of despair, wrapping around Ruth's heart like a vice. Shut up! She shouted, her heart hammering furiously. With every ounce of her soul, she knew she had to push back, ignite that stubborn flame of love that refused to be extinguished. You're lying. I was there for them, I loved them. Suddenly, the shadows writhed violently, a cacophony of sorrow screaming through the void. The darkness flickered, revealing glimpses of her children, their faces obscured in shadow but brimming with a silent cry for help. Mommy! Save us! The words echoed over and over, thrumming in her ears, each repetition a knife twisting deeper within her. As if conjured from her own heart's desire, another piece of light broke through, brighter than before, cascading towards her. But the shadows surged, a relentless tide crashing against her, seeking to pull her under. Ruth was caught between the light and the crushing darkness, a dance of temptation drawing her closer to both stakes. Choose. The grotesque figure shrieked, its laughter weaving through the shadows. To save them means losing yourself. What are you willing to sacrifice? Ruth felt the swell of uncertainty, gnawing at her resolve, fear spilling into the cracks of her will. Could she even save them if it meant being forever changed? Were they worth losing everything she had left? No. She screamed, summoning every ounce of strength as she fought against the tide. I won't lose them. Not again. But the darkness snaked through her fingers like smoke, and with a shudder of despair, the light flickered, fading into uncertainty. Just at the moment she thought she had made her choice, the world twisted again, and the light vanished entirely, leaving her gasping in inky blackness. In that visceral moment, dread seeped deep into her bones, a reputation she could not ignore. Ruth, the shadows coiled tighter, breathing closer, whispering secrets that chilled her to her core. You are more entwined with this darkness than you realized, and then, a new presence surged, blinding her with its brilliance, illuminating the midnight realm like a beacon. Mommy, don't be scared. The voice floated down from the light, an angelic melody amidst the grim symphony of shadows, piercing through the chaos. Come to me. But something sinister loomed beneath the surface of that sweet call. Ruth's heart raced. What was she about to sacrifice? Moments stretched like a coiled spring. The choice was hers to make, but could she trust the shimmer, or was this yet another deception? As the darkness began to quiver with anticipation, Ruth's breath caught in her throat what awaited her beyond the veil. Would she break free, or become one with the night? Ruth convulsed in the grip of shadowy whispers that swirled like an unforgiving storm. Her heart raced as she faced the light, its brilliance a stark contrast to the grasping darkness threatening to envelop her whole. Goosebumps prickled her skin, and a sense of foreboding washed over her. Come to me. The voice echoed again, sweet and melodious, yet layered with an undertone of dread. Her instinct screamed for her to flee, to resist, but her maternal instinct reached out for that glimmering beacon. Save us. The anguish in that word echoed against the walls of her mind, forcing her to look deeper into the painful shadows. A fleeting glimpse appeared, two small figures barely illuminated, faces contorted in desperation. Oh, the pain in their eyes. It gripped Ruth's heart and squeezed, pulling her closer to the light, yet the darkness wrapped around her legs like a chain, anchoring her in place. What do you want? She gasped, voice wavering. A heavy silence met her, the anticipatory air thickening until it felt suffocating. The distorted figure loomed over her again, a mocking grin plastered across its warped features. What do I want, Ruth? It purred, voice diabolical. What a silly question, you already know. You see, I thrive on choices like yours, torn between vacuous hope and inevitable despair. It's what brings me life. Ruth shivered, remembering a time when fear was something distant, something she could manage. But now, enveloped in uncertainty, her confidence crumbled. Could this deranged creature even represent her truest fears? Your children, it taunted, letting the word hang in the air. Every moment of their suffering is a reminder of the love you failed to give them. Every choice you make now just adds another layer of despair. No. The word burst from her lips, an instinctual response against the creature's venomous words. She had given them everything. Hadn't she? They were alive once, they must be alive somewhere. The thought ignited a flicker of defiance in her. Choose then. The grotesque figure exclaimed, its laughter cutting through the thick ambience, echoing like thunder in a storm. Believe the gentle light is your savior, or embrace the darkness that already binds you. You think you're fighting me? You fight yourself. The shadows slithered closer, oozing over her like ink spilled onto paper. Her thoughts tangled, electric and sharp, as she glimpsed fleeting memories of her children's laughter and warm hugs. I will find you. She called into the darkness, grasping for the remnants of her resolve. I will fight for you. The light pulsed, as though responding to her plea, but it felt distant and out of reach. As panic surged through her veins, the shadows writhed around her. They raced to consume her words, turning them into despair, morphing them into screams of anguish. Mommy! Help! Came the distant voices again, echoing louder now, each note high with terror that clawed at her sanity. Enough! She yelled, determination coiling inside her like a spring ready to snap. But the darker impulses twisted her thoughts further, sowing seeds of doubt, whispering doubts about her strength. Will you surrender? The creature's voice whispered seductively, a false lullaby woven with venom. In that moment, Ruth felt herself teetering on the edge of oblivion. Could she truly hold on to the light? Would it keep her children safe? Would it shatter her own spirit? As tears flooded her eyes, Ruth realized the truth. The shadows were waiting for her choice, the moment when doubt would allow them to consume her entirely. Come to me, the light beckoned again, even closer now, shining bright, promising safety. She felt her breath hitch, hanging in the suffocating dark, as another shrill scream echoed through the void. Ruth's heart seized in terror, but just as the shadows lunged forward, plunging into her thoughts and dragging her under, a haunting cry pierced the fabric of her fear, a voice she recognized, laced with panic, reaching across the dark abyss. It was her daughter, calling out again. Mommy, please. Caught between light and shadow, the choice loomed heavy before her, a haunting question echoing in her mind. What was the real monster? As the shadows lunged to pull her under, clamoring for her despair, she felt herself slipping. Mommy? As darkness whispered its final seduction, Ruth's mind buzzed with urgency, the weight of every moment crashing down on her. In the deepest pit of terror, she could feel it, the choice was about to be made. But what if she chose wrong? What if hope vanished forever? With everything at stake, Ruth would not go down without a fight. But even as she took a step toward the light, an agonizing truth settled over her. Was she too late? Ruth's heart pounded in her chest as the darkness wrapped around her like a tightening noose. Every whisper, every beckoning call from her children grew more distorted, melding into a sickening swirl of despair. She inhaled deeply, her senses on fire with fear and the pungent scent of decay, the shadows swirling like a vortex, trying to claim her. Mommy, come to us. But there was determination behind her fear, a flicker of hope ignited by the love for her children. She steeled herself, feeling the warmth of light beckoning her amidst the chaos. I want to let you take them. She shouted, her voice trembling but resolute. For every twist of shadows pulling her down, she would push back twice as hard, drawing strength from memories of happiness, her children's laughter, their innocent smiles. Ruth forced herself to envision the life they built together, the joyous moments layered beneath the darkness taint. I choose you. I choose my children. She cried, as if the very act of speaking their names would shatter the heavy veil binding them. In a moment that felt like forever, the darkness stuttered, recoiling as her voice cut through like a blade. She felt the pulse of the light, brightening and swelling at her declaration. The shadows howled in pain, their sinister grip wavering. With fierce determination, she surged forward, pushing against the tide, feeling her way through the churning void. Her heart raced as she spotted them, her children, trapped in a glimmering barrier of shadows. Their faces were pale, terror glinting in their eyes, yet their hands were outstretched toward her, their pleas tugging at her soul. "You have to fight for us, Mommy," they shouted in unison, and Ruth's heart ached. The bond of their family pulsed, each beat a wave of strength gathering within her. "I'm coming," she yelled, and with renewed vigor, she lashed out against the encroaching shadows, projecting her essence, her love into the light. She felt an electric charge building, a force drawing her nearer to the threshold where light and darkness met. As if sensing their impending defeat, the grotesque figure materialized again, its voice a thunderous echo of rage. "You think you can save them? You'll lose your essence in the process," it roared, but Ruth wasn't listening anymore. The shadows sneered, curling around her limbs like serpents, desperate to ensnare her. "No. My love is stronger than your darkness," Ruth screamed, feeling that connection surging through her veins, a bright thread of pure love radiating from her heart. She concentrated, pushing against the shadows with every fiber of her being, reaching out to her kids. In response, the light exploded, a blinding tide washing over the room. An incandescent warmth flooded Ruth, wrapping around her in a fierce embrace. She saw her children's faces illuminated, their expressions tenderly glowing, reassured yet fearful. "Mommy!" they chimed. As the brilliance expanded, the shadows shrieked, scrambling back, writhing like wounded creatures. They dispersed, the woeful cries of the trapped fading into the air. Ruth felt the walls trembling with their departure, reality shifting like an ebbing tide, a storm finally receding, and then, with one final surge, Ruth broke free. She launched herself toward her children, through the radiant light that pulsed with a heartbeat of its own. "Hold on!" she cried. The moment they collided, warmth enveloped them, gripping them tightly as if time melted away. The dark void dissipated around them, the tendrils of despair vanishing like mist in the sunlight. Ruth pulled her children close, breathing in the sweet scent of their hair, the familiar heartbeat of family that defined her very existence. "I thought I lost you," she whispered, tears streaming down her face, her heart swelling with relief. "I'm so sorry I fought for you." "Thank you, Mommy," they cheered, their voices ringing with joy. But within her heart still sat a tender ache, the loss that lingered behind. In that moment, something shifted like the sun emerging from the clouds after a long storm. The weight of the darkness was no longer holding them captive. Outside, her familiar home stood proud, moonlight cast gentle rays dancing across Maple Hollow, illuminating the streets. The warmth seeped into their bones, binding them closer than ever. It was not the end that Ruth expected, but it was a beginning, a rebirth forged in love and resilience. The laughter of her children filled the air like a bird's first song in spring, and for the first time in a long while, hope blossomed anew. "Let us go home," she said, her voice steady with newfound purpose. Together they stepped into the healing light of the night, hand in hand, an indomitable family, breathing free, ready to reclaim their lives. Before the final scene fades, there's one last call to action. You need to subscribe now to this channel so you don't miss our next exclusive stories. Smash that like button and help us feed the algorithm, proving you're part of this community, and flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. Let's hear your thoughts. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this conclusion. Your support is crucial to keeping our stories alive.